Despite everything in 2026 getting more and more expensive when it comes to tech, displays, especially OLEDs, have come down in price significantly in models like Alienware's AW2726DM are offering a whole lot for just a few $100. So this begs the question, why should you spend more than $1,000 on a 27-inch OLED, since that is what Sony asks for their Inzone M10S II? I have spent the past few weeks with this one, and while the headline feature for it is the 540Hz refresh rate that goes up to 720, if you're willing to drastically sacrifice the pixel count you can see on screen, I feel like the sum of everything else, be it the super reduced chassis design, the high HDR brightness and the matte coating, are almost the more attractive arguments to spend this amount of money. Unfortunately though, the M10S II does come with some drawbacks that might be deal breakers for some of you. Again, especially given the pretty high asking price. But let's start at the beginning and let's get into it. Before we continue with our regular content, a quick word from our sponsor for today. Are you looking for a new mechanical gaming keyboard to complement your shiny laptop or desktop setup? Well, then you should definitely have a look at Logitech G's new G512X. Available in either 75 or 98% layouts, the new boards not only offer a pretty unique design with an RGB light bar spanning the whole front, but with hot swappable switches and support for analog variants, you can customize these beauties to completely fit your playstyle and tactile preferences. And to make sure you can get started right away, you even get a set of fitting TMR switches with you at all times. Make sure to follow the links in the description below to learn more. Alright, so at the heart of it all, the M10S II is a gaming monitor with a Tandem OLED panel with a resolution of 2560 by 1440 and capable of reaching up to 540Hz via DisplayPort or 480 via HDMI. All of this is wrapped in a super subtle and incredibly classy looking matte black chassis that keeps the slim profile of the OLED panel with this sort of hump that houses all of the connections and tech necessary to drive the screen. The look here is definitely one of the highlights for me personally, and I think the Inzone is one of the best looking displays on the market right now. And while I was skeptical about the small base of the stand, I can assure you it keeps the 27-incher securely in position while also allowing for quite a bit of positioning flexibility. You also get the pretty common port arrangement with two HDMIs, DisplayPort and a 2-port USB hub for your peripherals. Unfortunately, a USB-C connection is missing, which is a bit of a bummer given the price point. Another aspect I thought I would not enjoy as much as I actually did was the matte coating. And yes, it does take a little bit of the wow effect of an OLED, but since the M10S still gets proper bright, it's not really a problem. And while some other anti-reflective implementations give you this sort of shine instead of a highlight, it seems the Sony simply ignores almost all direct light, no matter where it's coming from, and you actually can completely freely position your shiny new screen even with a window directly behind you. Alright, before we get to if a 540Hz panel makes sense for us casuals and to my personal gaming and work impressions, let us see what the Inzone can deliver in terms of numbers. In the end, Sony claims up to 1500 nits of brightness for this puppy. And that is almost what we have been able to get in HDR as well. Just mind you, we are talking HDR peak values for a pretty small part of the screen. That said, exactly this behavior gives you those glaring highlights that make HDR gaming so much better, especially if you have games that properly support it. In SDR you get a more modest but still quite reasonable, roughly 320 nits, which combined with the matte coating should be more than enough for even the brightest rooms. Contrast and color gamut coverage is on typical levels for an OLED and response times are pretty much instantaneous. Usually OLEDs are also pretty solid choices for creators, especially when you're working in photo and video editing. But unfortunately, color reproduction and accuracy is pretty off, and even with our manual calibration, I wasn't able to bring down the delta E's to a point where I would feel confident trusting the Inzone. That's a big bummer, especially for display in this price class, and considering Sony even implemented pre-calibrated presets. So keep in mind, if you're doing anything color critical on a daily basis, this will not be the ideal main panel for you. Alright, that's numbers, but how does all of this translate into the real world? Well, first off, to run anything at up to 540Hz, you need some pretty beefy hardware, and since I really wanted to see if it makes a difference for a casual competitive gamer like myself, I went all out when it comes to our test system. This is the Area 51 from Alienware, and it not only comes with a 5090, but it also bets on a Ryzen 7 9850X3D. So in terms of GPU and CPU grunt for games, it doesn't get any faster than this combination. And yes, in Fortnite's performance mode, I was able to run the game at the Inzone's native refresh rate, and it's incredibly smooth, and it's simply a terrific gaming experience. That said, I am not so sure if I would have been able to tell blindly if I was at 240, 360 or 540Hz, to be quite honest, even though I could imagine if I were to game like this for a few weeks, going back to something like 240 might be more of a change than going back and forth all the time. So when it comes to the headline feature for this one, which is again definitely the super high refresh rate for a casual, I'd say it's nice to have. And if you are professional, then it's probably out of the question to get anything else but the best and the fastest to make sure you have the technical competitive edge. I did also try the 720Hz mode for a few matches, but damn, 1280 by 720 is not great at 27-inch, and while you will get a few hundred hertz more in game, I personally don't really feel like it's worth the much lower resolution, and it really doesn't look good anymore if you ask me. Aside from pure speed, and I mentioned this before, the HDR experience for the Inzone is also simply incredible, and I had a ton of fun in AC Black Flag or something like Stranding 2. You probably have also seen it in our B-roll already, but I hooked up the Inzone to a PS5 Pro I am testing right now. And definitely make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our video for Sony's latest and greatest when it comes to consoles, since even for me as a diehard PC gamer, this one impressed me quite a bit. But circling back to the M10S II, while the console is of course not able to get anywhere close to 540Hz, it ran pretty much everything at 120 without a problem. And again, the HDR experience you get is pretty sweet, and I had a great time with this combo as well after I turned off the Area 51. Apart from gaming, overall image quality is fine, and despite a less than ideal color reproduction, the Inzone did okay for our videos and general productivity, even though I felt like you can see some very subtle horizontal lines on evenly colored backgrounds. At one point I also had some very pronounced horizontal artifacts across pretty much the whole middle section of the screen that only vanished after I did the built-in pixel refresh, which is a bit odd considering I only had this one for a few weeks. So is the Sony Inzone M10S II worth its pretty steep asking price? Well, if you really want or need the high refresh rate combined with the HDR experience and want something that looks much more subtle than competing offerings with the same panel, then I'd say yes it is. For me personally, I would rather spend my money on something that is a bit more versatile, especially outside of gaming. But I would definitely miss the looks and the matte coating, which I ended up liking much more than I thought I would, even though I usually do not really mind glossy displays. But please folks, let me know what you think, and please also sound off below what display size, resolution and refresh rate you are running right now. I would really like to know what you guys are into at the moment. Thanks a ton for watching folks, please leave a like if you felt entertained and definitely hit that sub button, you don't want to miss our PS5 Pro video. My name is Alex, you have been absolutely fantastic and I can't wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.